All right, it's the illuminated session again. Okay. All right, we're on collars, Tithis and Nityas. Okay. For some reason, something told me, I was like, when I finished reading this book, I just never just kept going. And it's like, this is the opinion. I was like, it's probably not. Well, I knew it was important because it's dealing with collars. So I didn't really know what at the time what Tithis and Nityas were. So I was like, I'll probably pick it up and read it some other time. So today it was a good enough time. I said, something told me, he said, looking at the back of the book, So I was like, this is the back of the book, of course. And I was, let me see, I was right here, looking at AWAS. Oh, and I will make something dealing with this very soon, AWAS. But yeah. So I was looking at the back in the glossary. I was going through a lot of different things, looking at certain different words I might have seen before, you know. But some just told me just to, like the Kundalini. I was checking it out today. It was something else I was looking at that caught my attention. Maybe I didn't highlight it, I guess. Well, yeah, they talk about voodoo in here, about the the Yazidi tribe I was telling you about. They do a lot of this is Afro-Caribbean religion in Haiti, which is referred to more appropriately as voodoo. So putting like the voodoo and let me say the Latin America or the South America Santeria together, those deities, putting those together. So they always call it too also wanga, and in Afro-Caribbean magic, a small bag used to hold charms or spells, often used as a term to refer to acts of black magic. Okay, so okay, let me get into the section I was reading to today. So I went over some parts of the book that I didn't, it's an old line project says you go over the the subject, see if something you missed before. So I was going over some things that I saw in the book, and some just told me to check out the appendix. All right, it's dealing with the collars, Tithis and Nityas. All right, some of the highlighted stuff I'm gonna go over. That's what I'm gonna do. Very and it was so craziest thing is dealing with a lot of same things I was going over the last 2 days with sidereal astrology. They're talking about the same thing. Okay, the Vedic references Sanskrit and India. Okay, if you've seen the last 2 or 3 videos I posted, that's what it's dealing with. Okay, all right. I'm not gonna read everything. I'm gonna go most of everything that was highlighted. Those a lot of important information. All right, just to save time and also hit you with the hard hitting facts. You can delve into everything else at your own time and expand on it. Okay, the collars, the vaginal secretions that are so central to his concept. Mark Kenneth Grant. He was one of the students of Aleister Crowley. The concept of Tantra and thelemic magic. You find them through, these are the Sanskrit terms or Vedic references. Okay? Like I just said, for somebody that wants to dig deeper in these systems, like it says here, you can always look these up. Sanskrit and Vedic text is like morely in the mainly in the Eastern Hemisphere or in India or different parts of Tibet. You'll find that too also. Okay. Okay, like we was talking in the last video, Vedic astrology in conjunction with the ritual of the fire snake. I've heard about this before. I read up on it before. I gotta get readjusted to it more. It's a or the sapphire, the red sapphire ritual too also. Okay, Vedic astrology is not well known in the West, aside from a thelemic magician's. Well, hold on. Aside from make sure I'm at the right spot. Yeah. Aside from a few popular books on the subject, and it is virtually ignored among the thelemic magicians of the author's acquaintance. Admittedly, very few. To become reasonably expert in Vedic astrology would require a good knowledge of Sanskrit, and tremendous patience with the rather disorganized and confusing array of books on the subject. And this is somewhat a lacking among occultists in the West because they feel like, well, they don't have to go there. They feel like they going pretty much far they can go, and there'll be a lot more to take on for. I'm like, you're supposed to pull in everything occultist, that which is hidden. If it's unknown to you, you're supposed to add it to your repertoire. So when they pretty much say occultists in the West, so they pretty much saying a lot of Caucasian or white occultists. You know what I'm saying? Or you'll have some so-called black or melanated occultists too that will just stay inside of one system, like voodoo or Ifa. They won't even venture out, you know what I'm saying, into other things. So you can say mainly the ones in the West, of course, because mainly all the ones in the East, they all have a system base, but they always pull in. You know, most of those systems are pretty much the same. So one should always know and be able to check that out. The Kalas and the Tithis, the phases of the moon, which are same in number as the Kalas, and which can afford us a better understanding of the whole subject. The Nityas will also be listed. These are the deities associated with the individual phases and Tithis. In this way, it is hoped that the new generation of Typhonian magicians and those simply interested in the subject will access to a more profound understanding of the praxis. So I was like looking like, okay, I never looked at that part of the book. So it's actually more deities. So like 7-Eleven, that's your magic, just passed. How funny how things be happening. I was myself, I'm in the middle of doing something right now. Not like right at this moment. I'm in the middle of doing some actual work right now. And the funny thing is, I've been getting more and more deities to put in. So when I was turning the page and they said deities, I'm like, oh, and I seen more deities I can add to my repertoire now. Like I have some Hindu mythology deities already, but this is This is more than what I've actually knew I would be able to run across. So this is actually going to be more of a help, because if you really think about it, males or females. Like now, I want you to say, I'm not saying males or females. Males are females. You know what I'm saying? So females are females, but like males, we are females. Just like when you go to the doctor. I've told this to women like before, like they always attest, like that's correct. You know, like when you go to the doctor and they find out you're pregnant, they say come back to me in like 2 or 3 months. You'll find out if it's gonna be a boy or a girl. It's gonna be a boy or a girl because everything is a girl from the start. So it only turns to a male. Get it? So, and I see like all of these deities are female deities, which is a great thing. If we all female, just tapping into a power, or inner power. Males need to be, not saying be feminine. I mean more of like being able to reach into a feminine side of themselves, and females are getting into more of a masculine side of themselves too. Also, it's like not duality, but knowing how to reach the other side of the self, and to become one with self. That's one thing that's I've been looking at as going through the heart chakra, is your truth, inside yourself that you're using to bring forth or to actually learn. Because most people use certain truths to use it for their ego. So, or like, are you really trying to use this to learn, or because ancestors, like in your time, will know if you're true at heart, if what you're doing is true. Okay, back to the script. But the Typhonian tradition is concerned with the pre-dynastic Egyptian traditions. Pre-dynastic is like before the kings and queens of a certain area. So like they would say Set Typhon, or Set. You know, they say like him fighting Asar and killing his brother, and fighting fighting um, um, his nephew. You like pretty much the story of the Lion King is pretty much a good basis. If anybody doesn't really know that story, you can look at that story. That's pretty much the story. But Set, that was looked at as the highest deity. Even Sekhmet, she's one of the oldest pre-dynastic deities too, also. But she carried over to the dynastic period too, also. But they saying that come to find out, Sekhmet is the actual Sphinx. Okay, let's keep it moving. And those that are much older even than Sumer, which is Sumerian, and Mohenjo-Daro. I need to look that up. I saw that today. I'm like, that's totally new to me. I need to check that out. It might be a different name that I'm used to. If we recognize that control over the serpent brain, which is the pineal gland, or the three pituitary gland and the pineal gland, is another, I forgot another name of it, but it's like supposed to three main glands. The serpent brain is a key feature of this type of magic. Then we also must recognize that this part of the human anatomy developed before the races had become differentiated from each other. Right. What we share is the basic psychobiological structure of our anatomy. Most parts, but certain nuances of melanated beings, and everybody, all humans have melanin in them, but like more of them have more, and some of them have a lot less. So it's small, minute differences, but the differences dealing with the serpent brain, because you're like they say, certain people combust from the inside because they have nowhere for their energy to reach an excess. We already spoke on this before. Okay, so that makes a huge difference. Okay. While we share the basic psychobiological structure of our anatomy, the practices that work in India will also work in Mexico, in Europe, and everywhere else. Once linguistic and cultural differences have been addressed, it's just that they have been codified better in India and China. I mean, like pretty much their standard or their spirituality has been around a lot longer, to where they wasn't I would say oppressed by other people that has a religion. Even though in China they've been pushing over the Buddhist thing over in Tibet a little bit more. Over time. So I met this guy a while back. He was saying, yeah, they've been bringing a lot more into Tibet from China, dealing with the Buddhist thing. Even though they do have that situation too, also, but it's right on the coast. So it's like India and China touching, and like Tibet is right in the middle, and it's like. But it's like they do have, some people have certain practices and some people have certain, but they have been pushing in on certain people in Tibet or in India, to be exact, which many academics now seem to agree was the source of the Western alchemical tradition, when though they were patently biologically and not strictly or exclusively mineral. The Typhonian tradition, it should be obvious by now, rejects nothing and accepts whatever works. So Typhonian is one of the oldest. So if it's the oldest, pretty much everything is a trace of Typhonian tradition. So these are things that the priests that left these areas, they went out and scattered out and placed these other types of tradition, spiritualities in other lands. Even though the other lands had the same type of people, they just passed more information along. So we have certain traces here and here and here and here. You have to put everything together. Okay? So that's why I said it should be obvious by now. The Typhonian tradition rejects nothing and accepts whatever works. Okay, that should be for anybody. If it don't work for you, if it don't apply, let it fly. That's what the saying says. Okay. All right. Now the collars. I'm gonna go into them, and what I'll do is I'll go into what each subject matter is, and then I'll just run through. I'm not gonna just name all of them. The deities, I'll probably you can just rewind it, and you can see the deities. You can put them inside your libation list if you have a libation list. Okay. All right. The collars. Quite often, the collars are identified with the Tithis or the phases of the moon. However, the phases of the moon have their own um, nomenclature, really little more than numbers, while the collars have more descriptive names. So you'll see when I show you, they have pretty much numbers on the side of the names. There are 16 collars, of which only 15 are considered visible. You'll see why. Their names are as follows. Okay, I'm just going to run through them. This is 1 through 6, and these are their translations. As you see, the first one doesn't have a translation, but it says possibly measurement. Okay, you can pause it and rewind. You can always do that. I'm just going to go through them right here, show you. Pause it, rewind it, do what you need to do. Okay, in the above list, the last collar, Amrita. And I remember seeing a beer, I believe, named Amrita. So these are all Hindu names. The elixir, vitae. I'm thinking vitae means vital elixir. Okay. In the above list, the last collar, Amrita, is the invisible one. I'm feeling like once it makes it to the pineal gland, Amrita is the invisible one. Readers will recall that Amrita is the word signifying the elixir vita. The sama. Sama is like a certain something that comes from a plant, and it's like considered like melanin. Okay, that descends from the cranial vault, or from a space a little above it. That's pretty much dealing with the pineal gland. Down through the body, once union between the kundalini is, you have 33 vertebrae, and in between that you have, just like the story of Moses when he picked up the snake of the staff and it turned into a staff, and the Red Sea, which is really your blood, the blood in your back separates. So you can go through. That means your energy is rising. Your energy is rising. So but once the union between Kundalini and Shiva is the pineal gland, has been attained. For this reason, the kala named Amrita is ruled by, Nitya, is in this case, a kind of goddess of the kala called the Maha Tripura Sundari, i.e. the goddess of the Sri Chakra, like the Sri Lantra, okay? Sri Yantra. The other Nityas are as follows, okay? I'm not going to be standing here long. You can pause it so you can see everything. You can pause it and rewind it, add it to your libation list, okay? Now this is 10 through 16. Okay, I also forget. You can find this in the book, The Dark Lord. I almost forgot to show you the name of it. I don't want you to be like, where'd you get this from? The Dark Lord, by Peter Levenda. You can always look it up. It's on Amazon. You can find it online. Okay. Thus, as we have said, the last Nitya, Maha Tripura Sundari, also known as the goddess 16, is not visible and is associated with the kala Amrita. So Maha Tripura Sundari, the great goddess of the three cities. So it's another gland, pituitary gland, pineal gland, and one more. I'm drawing a blank, but I'm thinking the goddess, the great goddess of the three cities, and they say that's the one that's not visible. Okay, that's the collar that's not visible. So it's like dealing with the moon. Once it's done waxing, it's a brand new moon pretty much, and it's starting afresh. So it's the same thing. 3 cities, three glands. Okay, the Tithis. As mentioned, the names of the Tithis are really just numbers in Sanskrit. But since one will come across the names given and again, given then across the names give again and again in the Tantric and Jyotish literature, the full list is given here. Okay. There's no these just see pretty much right here, just pretty much in the list of, first through 15. So you have like 30 days, 30 days in per month. So pretty much the 15th, I'm looking like two each one per 2 days. Purnima for the full moon, or Amav Ajya for the new moon. So these are when these cycles are completed. No pun intended, cycle. All right. But now to complicate things a little further, we must take the waning and waxing periods of the moon into consideration. There are thus a total of 30 kalas or tithis to make a complete lunar cycle. In Indian astrology, which is the southern hemisphere of astrology, these are divided into the Shukla Paksha, the waxing moon, and the Krishna Paksha, the waning moon. Okay, so that the waxing is filling up of the moon, and the waning is the emptying of the moon. So thus we can be more specific in our enumeration of the tithis as follows. So I'm going to get all of them. You can pause it. Once I get it to 30, I'm actually going to go so you can be able to see it. It's going to be too wide for everything to be seen. So I'm going to get on to 30, then you can just pause it. By the way, I get halfway, like at 15 somewhere, right there. All right? You should be able to pause it and be able to get all the deities here. See? Shakula, when it's starting to, gonna be filled up by the full moon right here. And this is when it's the new moon right here. Okay, when it gets to full moon, and then it goes to the 30th day by the new moon. Okay. All right. The first Tithi, Shukla Prat Ipat, is 12 degrees of the moon away from the union of the sun. The second Tithi, Shukla Dvitiya, is thus 24 degrees of separation from the sun, etc. This concept is quite important because the relationship between the moon and the sun is central to Indian astrology, which computes everything from the moon rather than the sun. As we mentioned before, Indian astrology is not solar-based. The positions of the planets are computed from the moon, and the houses of the astrological chart are similarly constructed. In addition, chaos. The actual positions of the planets against the sidereal zodiac are employed, and the conventional dates of the zodiacal signs are not used. So, like, I was reading, is like trying to make sense of this. One birthday, therefore, is calculated every year by reference to the original positions of both the sun and the moon on the day of birth. Thus, if one were born with the sun in Libra and the moon in the 5th Tithi, one's birthday is not celebrated until both of those positions repeat themselves. Okay? You can always rewind what I just said. I'm going to keep moving. So, a birthday in Indian astrology is both solar return and lunar return. The exact degrees will not be repeated each year, of course, but to some Vedic astrologers, the emphasis will be on the lunar phase, the Tithi, being the same with the solar degree remaining the variable. So they are moon-based people, okay? Pretty much going over the same thing. When a Vedic astrologer computes an annual transit horoscope, for instance, it is calculated from the Tithi, the same one that occurred on the day of birth, rather than from the solar return position. Both are taken into consideration, of course, because the angle between the sun and the moon, the two luminaries, but also representing the two essences that gave life to the individual, the Kala and the Bindu, the blood and the semen, the red and the white. Okay? So we're just saying it takes, of course, which is two forces, the sun and the moon, of course, and they're depicting it as men and women and men, and the fluids and the fluids, aka the forces that come from these people. Okay, red and white as of utmost importance. It has been a defect of Western astrology that the emphasis on the solar aspects of the cosmos rather than mingling of the essences of Shiva and Shakti, of the moon and the sun. Each of the phases of the moon, the Tithis, have yantras, magic diagrams, and mantras associated with them. It's going to describe this very soon. Each of the Nityas has her own yantra, mantra, and shakti as well. They also represent the 16 vowels of the Sanskrit alphabet. According to several of the tantras, the 15 Nityas are to be visualized as occupying spaces around the central downward pointing triangle of the Sri Kakra. In the inner triangle represents the yoni of the goddess. In the very center of the triangle is the bindu seed, the dot. So everybody doesn't have the dot. Okay, those are poles. The pretty much your body is like the earth. Same thing. You have a northern pole and a southern pole. The southern pole is to get more likely try to clean out as much as possible, right? Clean out to be who you really are. Like you say, oh, I haven't eaten all day and shit. I'm gonna lose it on somebody. Same thing as who you really are. It's like you putting physical things on top of who you really are. In most cases, and then raising that energy up when you have nothing inside you. Raising that energy is like a fire that raises up into the actual the bindu seed, or the dot, like the black dot that represents the 16th color. That's why it says, go back. So that's why I was saying it will make sense. Okay, right here. The collars, the 16 collars, of which only 15 are considered visible. Okay, and that 16th in the very center of the triangle, the bindu, or the dot that represents the 16th collar, and therefore the goddess 16 herself. All right, and it says is damn near invisible because it's up in a, it went through the whole, it went through the body and is up in its highest point. It made it to Shiva in the pineal gland. Recourse to a book on Indian astrology would be helpful. to the reader who wishes to understand this concept better, especially with regard to the kalas, the Tithis, and their ruling Nityas. Inclusion of the appropriate mantras, yantras, as part of ritual of the fire snake. The fire snake is the Kundalini, as offered by Grant, may be helpful as well, at least in the beginning, in order to orient yourself with regard to the chakras, the kalas, and the phases of the moon. So, um, if women want to do this with a male, it would, you explain and break down to everything that you're trying to do and trying to get accomplished. If you want to have a common goal, or you have a wife or a husband that you want to do this with. I mean, if you have a husband you want to do this with, or if you're a male and you have a wife that you want to do this with, this would be very helpful if you break this down with them, and that's how you can bring things to happen for you, by doing this. All right, that's the end of this video. Oh, okay, all right. That's what I wanted to do before I left. Before I ended the video. Okay. You may know this already, of course, but I want to read this part. Someone told me just to read it. Okay, it is believed by yogins, people that study, or people that like spiritual advisors. I guess people can help. Ayurvedic physicians and Indian alchemists, that it takes 14 days to replenish the semen after an ejaculation. So that's a good thing, to learn not to ejaculate. Okay, that's a good thing not to, unless it's like a part of a ritual that you're doing. So not doing that, you actually building up your actual power inside until you actually decide to unleash that fluid. So just like the moon, it takes 14 days in order. I'm gonna read the rest of it because I don't want to lose anybody. That it takes 14 days to replenish the semen after an ejaculation. This is roughly equivalent to one paksha, i.e., either the waning or the waxing period of the moon. So it may be safe to say that they are connected. So pretty much like the same thing with the male too. Also, so like the female has the cycle when she's going through the ruby, or when they're going through the cycle of bleeding. The same thing. So just like you give out fluid, the fluid comes from your it's a fluid that comes from your body, or the fluid that comes from your mind. So if you unleash that fluid, it takes like 14 days. So it's like 28 to 30 days in a month. So it takes for you to have full capacity of what the fluid you lost. It'll take 14 days. The more you release that fluid, the more you actually killing yourself. Come to find out, I did not know that. So the more you giving up, the more you actually killing yourself, not just physically but spiritually too. Also, all right. Let me see.